Wait, so are you saying this Rahab guy could be the prophet of old that Lehi mentions in the Book of Mormon?
Yep, that's where you...
Dude,
yes,
get out of town!
Here, Lehi is clearly saying there were people who preached the Messiah, and they were cast out and stoned and slain.
Glory, glory, glory.
But the interesting thing is that he says you were cast out, stoned, and slain like the prophets of old.
Okay, which ones are we talking about here?
Yeah, good question, Carter.
And you think this guy inspired Lehi?
Oh, well, you're going to think so too. Watch. This is a dude living in Jerusalem around the time of King Josiah and Lehi. And their story goes something like this. They say, when Jeremiah the prophet declared that the city of Jerusalem was to be handed over to destroyers,
Okay.
our father Rahab paid attention.
This is just like the story of Lehi.
It's just like the story of Lehi. So you read the Apocrypha enough and you start to say, like you said, counter narrative. You're like, oh my gosh, these are all the guys who were ripped out. They were ripped out by the people trying to stone Lehi.
Wow.
Like these are them. And this is
this is so cool, man. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to Ward Radio. I'm your host, Cardinal. Today I'm joined in the studio by Jonah Barnes, the Associate Professor of all things Apocryphal, who has a wild apocryphal, not story, evidence happening for us. We all know Lehi and his cool Liahona and the Lehites' exodus from Jerusalem. That was really the inciting event of the Book of Mormon. But before there was Lehi, before there was Nephi, Sariah, Sam, Laman, Lemuel, and the exodus from Jerusalem, before there was the Liahona, there was this man who inspired Lehi named, how do you say it again, Jonah?
Rahab.
Rahab. And the Rehabites. Okay, I'm butchering this.
No.
But anyway,
right.
Meet the nomad, the proto-Lehite that inspired Lehi during the time of Jeremiah and all of the above. This apocryphal hero that we haven't heard of yet, but Jonah Barnes has brought to our front doorstep. Jonah Barnes, go.
Excellent introduction, Cardin. Yes, yes. So we're going to talk about Rahab. Rahab, or however you want to say it. He's the proto-Lehi, the Lehi before Lehi.
He exists only in the Apocrypha?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Only Apocrypha.
Okay.
And you're going to find out why.
And you think this guy inspired Lehi?
Oh, well, you're going to think so too. Watch.
Okay. I'm all ears.
All right. So here's the deal. So we're going to go back. Diddly-doo. Okay.
Yeah. Rock on.
And so what inspired this is I was looking at 1 Nephi chapter 1. And there's something real funny about 1 Nephi chapter 1. I put a snippet in the Discord of it, or you can look it up on LDS.
Yeah, 1 Nephi chapter 1. I'm right here.
1 Nephi chapter 1. If you scroll all the way down to verse 19, I think this is one of the most important verses, perhaps the most important verse in the Book of Mormon.
Okay, right here. Rock on.
So this is Lehi in Jerusalem, okay? And he's having a bad day. Right? Yeah. He's having a bit of a Samuel the Lamanite day. People are trying to kill him. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
Who among us?
He's getting canceled.
Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. And he says, and if you read it carefully, he says, it came to us, the Jews did mock him, or Lehi, because of the things which he testified of them. Now, what are those things? Oh, he said, your entire city is going to be destroyed because of abominations. That's what he said. Destruction of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
What do? They laugh. They mock.
Yeah.
Okay, these people have some thick skin. But then what does he say? He says, and also the things which he read in the book manifested plainly of the coming of a Messiah and the redemption of the world. Now, when he says that, what happens in verse 20? The Jews heard these things and were angry with him, even as with the prophets of old, whom they had cast out, stoned, and slain, and they sought to take away his life. So, whoa. You say, all you people are doing abominations, the holy city Jerusalem is going to be destroyed, and they go, get out of here. But you say, oh, and there's going to be a Messiah, and they're like, kill him, and they freak out, right? And so you're like, these people are awfully sensitive about the Messiah. But the interesting thing is that he says, you were cast out, stoned, and slain like the prophets of old.
Okay, which ones are we talking about here?
Yeah. Good question, Cardin.
And I assume you have the answer.
Well, we might ask Lehi, because there were no prophets. They were cast out and stoned and slain.
Wait, there was tons of them.
Oh, who?
Wasn't it Jeremiah?
Well, so yeah.
Oh, wait,
so
but that was after they technically left.
that was after.
Between
he says prophets of old.
Oh,
So you're thinking, wait a minute. Now, there's a record of one guy.
Wait, so are you saying this Rahab guy could be the prophet of old that Lehi mentions in the Book of Mormon?
Yep, that's where you.
Dude,
yes,
get out of town. That is so cool, man.
You got it. And we're going to prove it. Okay, so.
Wait, so this guy right here might be the prophet that Lehi mentioned as being the prophet of old who was stoned and slain and cast out. Rahab right here.
Mentioned in the Book of Mormon.
Whoa, that is cool.
Yeah, okay, so here's how we know, okay? So there actually is an apocryphal book called The History of the Rechabites, or the Rechabites. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, it's spelled Rechab, or Rechab, R-E-C-H-A-B.
I think we call them the Rechabbers.
Yeah, that's the horrible Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure pronunciation right there. Yeah, so Socrates came down and he like...
And the Ratchabers.
Yeah, and the Rechabites, you know, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So what happened is this guy was a messianist. Well, sorry, I don't want to give away the ending. This is a dude living in Jerusalem around the time of King Josiah and Lehi, okay?
Wow,
okay. He's going to the cafe with Jeremiah and Lehi, right? They're swapping stories and like, oh, my kid got his mission call. Hey, man, that's awesome. Okay, he's buddies with these dudes, right?
Oh, and by the way, you're not just some, weird prophet in the wild. Like, look at this. There's an entire Wikipedia article dedicated to the Rechabites, in which it says... One theory of the Rechabites is that they belonged to the Kenites who accompanied Israelites into the Holy Land and dwelt among them. The sources of information are few and unclear, which is similar to most, apocryphal sources. Sometimes there's only one book that mentions something and it's pretty awesome and we have to do a lot of deep dives to figure out what it's saying. But anyway, it says, whoever he was, Rechanab ben Rechab forbade his descendants to drink wine, to own land or vineyards, or to live in cities. They were commanded to always lead a nomadic life, which would explain why Lehi was so willing to leave the land of his inheritance and to leave Jerusalem and to travel out into, the land southward and so on and so forth. And then this is crazy. It says, the Rechabites adhered to the law laid down by Jonadab and were noted for their fidelity to the old established customs of their family in the days of Jeremiah. So it's right there.
Yeah, dude.
In the perfect time frame.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you.
And as a reward for their fidelity, God proclaims that there will always be a descendant of Jonadab in his service.
Now, Jew, what does that sound like?
It sounds almost like the Aaronic priesthood.
It sounds like the book of Enos when he says your seed will not be utterly destroyed, right? Sounds just like it, dude. Okay, so here's the deal. So,
and one last thing. I'm sorry. Look at this. Claims of the descendants of the Rechabites. Look at this one.
Yeah.
The Makilta tells a story presumably dating to the late Second Temple period of Rechabites known as the sons of water drinkers due to their abstention from wine. Dude, this is so cool. And the apocryphal story of Zosimus from late antiquity details the journey of a monk named Zosimus to the land of the Rechabites. So this is like, okay, everybody talks about GM and Ford, but they forget Chrysler out there. That Chrysler made some really killer muscle cars. In fact, that we never talk about the Roadrunner. Everybody's chasing after Camaros. Everybody's trying to collect Ford Mustangs, but we all forget about, dude, that Roadrunner, especially the convertible Roadrunner, was really the best. There was just so few made. They oftentimes don't, float around in the zeitgeist as much. But these are Rechabites. It sounds like these cats are the proto-Lehites.
The Roadrunners.
That are they're the Chrysler, they're the Mopar muscle cars out there.
That's exactly it. That's all. For this and more, join us at Word.
Okay, so keep going, bro.
So you got it exactly right. So the story of Zosimus. So the history of the Rechabites is this apocryphal book, and it follows this dude named Zosimus. He goes wandering out of the wilderness. He's a very righteous guy, and he comes to a body of water. And the body of water is too big to cross, and so an angel helps him across. With the power of God, he gets across this huge body of water. Okay. And at the other side of the body of water, he runs into this civilization. These people there, and they say, "We are the children of Rahab. We are the Rechabites." Okay. And he says they are incredibly righteous people. They're so righteous they're untainted by the world. They've been saved from the wickedness of Jerusalem. Okay. As he's there chatting with everybody, he hears their story. And their story goes something like this. They say, when Jeremiah the prophet declared that the city of Jerusalem was to be handed over to destroyers,
Okay.
our father Rahab paid attention. Okay?
Oh, okay.
What does that sound like? Okay, right as Jeremiah is saying this city's going to be destroyed, some guys listened. Jeremiah, Baruch, and Lehi weren't the only ones. There was this other dude, Rahab, who said, we got to get out of here.
Wait, who was Baruch again?
Baruch, well, that's perhaps another podcast. He's the sidekick. He's the Robin to Jeremiah's Batman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Oh, yeah, no, duh. That's why I recognize the name. Yes. So that could be another radio episode. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, freaky deaky, because Baruch stuff shows up in the Book of Mormon very plainly. It's freaky.
Wow. Okay, keep going.
Okay, so the family of Rahab, they are like super devoted, and they have diet and grooming standards which show their fealty to God or whatever. They pleaded with the Lord to spare Jerusalem, and he did for a while. But then the people of Jerusalem drive them out. And why do they drive them out? Funny thing. Well, in the history of the Rechabites, the Apocryphal book, it says that they were driven out because they were always, quote, worshiping God, the Son of God himself. So they're cast out because they are messianists. Because they preach the Messiah, just like Lehi said. He said, I preach the Messiah, they try to kill me and cast me out like the prophets of old. He's talking about these people who are cast out of Jerusalem because they're preaching the Messiah. Okay?
Wow. This is absolutely intriguing. This is, as we say in Spanish, tal cual. This is just like igualito. This is just like... good job, bro. You're crushing it. This is just like the story of Lehi.
It's just like the story of Lehi. So I have a list here of 6 ways that this is exactly like the story of Lehi. Okay. 1, they live in Jerusalem right before the Babylonian captivity.
Wow.
2, they descend from a righteous father, after which they rename themselves Lehites and Rechabites. Look, we didn't come up. I didn't come up with the Rechabites, the ites. This is from that time period. They call themselves Rechabites. 3, they follow this father who believes the prophecy that Jerusalem will be destroyed. 4, they flee into the wilderness. 5, they're led to a promised land across a wide expanse of waters. And 6, they believe in the controversial divine sonship of the coming Messiah. All these things, just like Lehi.
Oh, yeah, baby.
It's like, it's crazy. When you read it, you're like, oh my gosh, it's like the same deal. So we've got Lehi, we've got Baruch, we've got Jeremiah, we've got Rahab, all in the same city at the same time, all preaching the Messiah, and all cast out.
Okay, and all cast out. And Rahab was slain, or?
Rahab, it doesn't say the fate of, he goes into the wilderness with his kids. He leaves and goes there. I think he's dead by the time Zosimus gets there.
Dude, is that the sealed portion, bro?
Well, we've got the history of the Rechabites, of a dude seeing
that's one of the apocryphal books.
The apocryphal, yeah.
The Sassimus, what's it called?
Zosimus.
By the way, I think we need a resident Hebrew scholar, diversity reader, pronunciation chief, because we are probably just butchering it. And then and then next to him, we need a Tony Hawk era surfer skater from the 90s. Who gives a competing pronunciation, because that is so California. You have no idea. Just come here to Los Angeles, and it's hilarious because, for example, there's some things we will pronounce flawlessly. Like, I don't know a single Californian that calls it La Jolla. We all say, oh yeah, I live in La Jolla. And they'll say La Jolla. And they'll just totally Latino pronunciation as though you were trying to learn in Spanish class, right? But then there's a major road that runs through the center of the town I grew up in. It was called Soledad, instead solitude. But instead of saying oh, he lives on Soledad Canyon Road, we say, oh, he lives on Soledad Canyon Road. Soledad. And all of a sudden we turn into a bunch of valley girls, they can't pronounce anything. So we'll literally say, take Soledad to La Jolla, it's just we know. It's Corona. Everybody says Corona correctly, like Corona, California. There might be a little bit of
Corone.
Yeah, so it is so hilarious. We choose to correctly pronounce and mispronounce. So, I'd love to get the correct pronunciation of Rahab, or however you say it.
Rechab.
But so even in the apocryphal works, there's no statement of what happened to him.
Of the man himself. So it begins and it says, Rahab, he believes, and technically what happens is he believes he takes his people out of the city because he thinks it's going to be destroyed. And then if in the actual history of the Babylonian conquest, they come and they install a new king, which is Zedekiah.
Yeah.
They don't kind of wipe the place out yet. So they kind of, first they approach and it's all scary, and then they back off, and then they come again for the final destruction. So during that gap is when Rahab and his family come back into the city, and everybody says, we can't stand you because you won't shut up about the Messiah. Get out of here. And that's when the Lord says, all right, get out of here. Now, Rahab, we love this guy. Jeremiah, we love this guy. And Baruch, we love this guy. But only one of the four was trusted with the Josephite record of the brass plates. Yeah. Only one of them was given the record.
Oh, yeah, but could there have been other records given to Rahab, right?
Oh, sure.
Because obviously the Bible is tribe of Judah, Book of Mormon, tribe of Joseph. Mm-hmm. There's other tribes floating around there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Remember the parable of the olive tree? And he said, we'll take this anywhere it'll grow. We'll take it anywhere it'll grow.
This is what's so funny is going back to the Wikipedia article that we looked up. It says, in more recent times, the name has been used by Christian groups keen to promote total abstinence from alcohol, such as the Independent Order of Rechabites.
Yep.
That is absolutely hilarious.
Well, they had two candidates. We either call ourselves the Independent Order of the Rechabites, or we call ourselves Mormons. We lost that one. They're like, oh wait, we don't want to sound like those guys.
Okay, so I we got another 5 or 6 minutes left here. I gotta know, first off, one, why is this not in the zeitgeist of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints more?
Oh,
right?
It totally should be.
Yeah, it 100% should be. And then two, what about his descendants? So, like, for example, when we were talking with Don Bradley, all right, shout out to Don Bradley in the Lost 116 Pages. When we were talking to Don Bradley, we talked about, okay, where are the lost 10 tribes of Israel? And I said, actually, we know where a lot of them are, and when Assyria came and did its thing, and then these people intermingle with these people. Okay, well, then you got the Samaritans. There's actually descendants of the Samaritans still, and they got this cool little logo. Crazy. And we got, he was starting to trace some of the genealogy of all these different tribes and how far they go back, and then who settled what region and why different cities carried different names. And it was super intriguing stuff, right? So, in theory, there really should be Rechabites around still, right?
Them? That was what you're saying. Let's go find them.
Yeah. So so anyway, here it is in 1839. I'm just literally, this is happening on the fly. If there's any question whether or not we perform this live, here's your answer right here. It says in 1839, the Reverend Joseph Wolf found in Yemen near Sinai. I assume that's how you spell Sinai without the I and an apostrophe instead. Says a tribe claiming to be descendants of Jehonadab, and in the late 19th century, a Bedouin tribe was found near the Dead Sea who was also professed to be descendants of Jehonadab. So just like, for example, like Jesus is in the Quran and then also in the Bible, and there's a lot of overlap of, I don't want to say the mythology because it kind of insinuates that it's not true, but there's an overlap of the origin stories or the mythology, for lack of a better term, of a lot of these faiths that has to be rooted in some truth because Jews had to come from somewhere.
Comes from somewhere.
And one of the tribes, it had to have been Judah, what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so it's like, are in Yemen near Sinai, this is there can we do 23andMe? You know what I'm saying? Like Ancestry.com, can they go out there and find the proto-Lehites still,
what happens is when we go out there and ask these people like the Mendaeans, we go out and ask and say, where do you come from? Even the North American tribes. Remember, what was the book we did? He walked the Americas.
Okay. Yeah.
When people actually do go out and talk to them, they all say, oh yeah, we're totally from Jehonadab. We're totally the Rechabites. We're totally, whatever. And all the anthropologists just go, no, you're not. And they don't believe them. All the scholars are like, no, that's impossible.
Yeah, even though there's no way you had any way to know this origin story that ended up showing up hundreds of years later, translated through the gift of the power of God. We didn't see it happen, so it didn't.
Yeah, so it couldn't have happened.
By the way, we just doubt that people that aren't like us, and by that we mean probably white, we just don't think it could have.
Yeah, it couldn't have.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
That's so everything, it's everything bad. It's arrogance of man mixed with racism, mixed with pride, mixed with frankly, an unscientific approach to history. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
and to that point, here Lehi is clearly saying there were people who preached the Messiah and they were cast out and stoned and slain. He's clearly saying that you could say anything about Jerusalem and whatever, but you mention the Messiah and they get angry. Then the history of the Rechabites clearly says, we believed in the Son of God. We believed in the Messiah. Okay? Now, I wonder why the history of the Rechabites wasn't included in the Bible. Because the people who compiled the Bible
were very anti.
They didn't want the Messiah in there.
We talk about like all of these podcasts and all of these radio programs that we've done with Dave Butler and the Deuteronomists and the revisions that
excellent
existed
episodes.
after Josiah.
Everybody, go back and watch those. If you haven't watched those episodes with Dave Butler and Mike Day, fantastic.
Yeah, it's not just like the great apostasy. There were a bunch of pretty great apostasies before we should just call it the greatest apostasy instead of the great apostasy, because it looks like there were a lot of plain and precious truths, not just taken out of the New Testament, but the Old. And now I'm not here to say that every single apocryphal book that we discover is true. I'm sure. Yeah, you are. You're like,
100%
yes.
true, people.
It doesn't surprise me that the associate professor of all things apocryphal is 100% invested in the Apocrypha. I love that, right? But at the same token, you cannot look at the overwhelming evidence of things that the Apocrypha points to not showing up in the official canon without thinking, okay, we're dealing with a counter narrative here, and there's no way that it's 100% untrue, which means there's things in the Apocrypha that are consistently showing up in the Apocrypha that have been consistently edited out, it seems, from the canon for us to think, okay, there are some non-canonical truths here that are actually really just canonical truths that in somebody's pride or in somebody's political conquest decided this is an inconvenient truth, and they just took out.
Yep, they went yoink. So we have proof of it. Guys, the Book of Mormon pulls no punches. The Book of Mormon, if you read the Book of Mormon, you really believe the Book of Mormon, you have to believe that the Old Testament was corrupted. You have to. It says right here, there's a bunch of prophets of old who were stoned and cast out and slain. Guys, that's not in there.
Is there any official position from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints of who those prophets of old were? Like, are they talking about like Isaiah? Or
there's one guy who I think was a Zechariah. There's like a million Zechariahs who was at one point stoned. It says there was one guy, Zechariah, who was stoned, and that would have predated Lehi. But he says here, the prophets of old cast out, stoned, and slain. That's not one guy. He's making it sound like there's a bunch. They sought my life. They sought their life. I mean, I'm just like these prophets of old. And Abinadi says, there haven't been any prophets since Moses that haven't testified of the Messiah. Abinadi, what are you talking about, dude?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
What are you talking about, man?
And that's BC right there.
Yeah, he's saying every prophet has testified of the Messiah. Abinadi, what are you smoking, brother? There's no messianic. The messianic prophecies in the Old Testament are so faint. Christians go blind trying to read the Messiah into the Old Testament. When the Book of Mormon says plainly, the people who ran the show, who had control, took it out. So, anyways,
this is absolutely intriguing. And I got to tell you, I'm sold. Last question. Besides verse 19 in chapter 1, are there any other connections to the Rechabites or of any kind of lost prophets or anything like that that you recognize? And are there any other references to Rahab in the Book of Mormon or any other lost prophets or anything like that you can think of right off the top of your head? Or is this
any other lost yeah, but we're not going to. Yes, there's lots more.
But we just got to.
They're
we
in the
come
Apocrypha.
back.
Look, in the Apocrypha, you read the Apocrypha and you start to say, like you said, counter narrative. You're like, oh my gosh, these are all the guys who were ripped out. They were ripped out by the people trying to stone Lehi.
Wow.
Like these are them. And this is
so cool, man.
One example,
All right. Awesome. Well, guys, please let us know what you guys think in the comments of this episode. Okay. And as always, for this and more, please check us out at wardradio.com.